Kerry. Good
Hi,
to meet you.
Kishore.
Kerry, now I was looking at your profile, and I think you had an incredible career from Okta to now being a CMO of a public company. And like I said, Okta has done incredibly well in the last quarter. Very impressive job. Would just love to hear your thoughts, Kerry, on what do you think is going to happen to the future of marketing with AI and all that stuff coming along? Like, what is sort of your general opinion on stuff? And then I can go deeper into other questions along the journey.
Well, first of all, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. And I love that we're diving right in with the question of the day around AI. So my first opinion is that within marketing, there are these seminal trends that pop up every 10 to 15 years that do drastically change marketing. The last one I think about was around 2007, 2008, when marketing automation came on the scene. And it was very similar where it was like, oh my goodness, the scale and the efficiency that this innovation drives is going to change the way that we market in a fundamental way.
Yeah.
I actually remember learning marketing automation in 2008. It was long before Marketo and things like that. It was like IBM's, I think it was Silverpot before IBM acquired it.
Okay.
But I remember at that time, people saying, this is going to put marketers out of work. Like the companies aren't going to need marketers anymore because it's all being automated. And what we learned is that it was another really effective tool in the tool belt that helped us scale. But then you put marketing efforts elsewhere. I think the same thing will happen with AI. I think it is a seminal moment. I think we have to test and experiment and find ways to bring it into our work, into our creativity, and it will make us better.
Yeah.
And it will not put marketers out of work. That's my point of view.
Very good analogy, Kerry. That's fantastically well described. One question on that note. One thing I worry about, though, not related to AI, is that, to your exact point, over the last 15, 20 years, every 5, 10 years, new channels opened up, right? In early 2000, it was email. Then the late 2000, it was social media, which became a lot more easier to reach prospects and customers. And I feel like suddenly there is no new channel that has opened up, whereas there is more opportunity to crowd those channels through AI, content, etc. So I'm just a little worried about the CAC to reach customers, right? Because the channels are limited, no new channels opened up, and we're just crowding those channels with the same old AI tools and content, etc. So I don't know if you think about that or any thoughts on that.
Right? I do think about it. I think we have to sometimes go back to like retro channels. And I know that sounds weird, but and this is just a part of our mix. But what I mean is well, everyone is doing everything digital. Everyone is going through these channels.
Right.
There's value in going back to some old tactics. Yeah. So I think what was weird about the pandemic is it took away some retro trends that were popping up, like direct mail, which I'm a big fan of actually using direct mail in a very thoughtful way. I'm spending more on out-of-home traditional advertising for brand. So I think that if everyone's shifting left, sometimes you got to then re-grab some channels that we've ignored for maybe a decade. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense, Kerry. I've thought about that a lot too. Direct mail is something that I missed and people don't talk about that enough. So maybe there is an untapped opportunity there. Now, moving to Okta, right? Obviously, you all are a leader in the identity space, which means that the brand of Okta in front of your customers is extremely critical because they have to trust you to trust their identities with you guys. And I'm sure you're thinking about Okta's brand constantly and how do we make sure that we give a very secure mindset to our customers for Okta. Would just love to hear your thoughts on what brand investments you're making this year and what are you excited about in general to elevate Okta's brand?
So the lawyers at Okta won't let me go into specifics, so it's fine. I won't, but I can tell you just in general, we've greatly increased our brand investment year over year at Okta, and I expect to do the same next year. And I'll talk about why.
Yeah.
But I will say, just as an industry to start off with, I think B2B tech companies historically have underinvested in brand and overinvested in demand generation.
Right.
Now, I say this knowing that the bulk of my career before was in demand generation. So I love demand generation. I have the SDR team in my org. Like, it's very important in B2B. But where there are distinct dollars you need to spend in brand building and in brand building tactics and channels and messaging that is very different than what you do in demand generation and very different than what you do in product marketing. And that underinvestment in brand it can be a real detriment to growth. The reason why I believe in this so much, well, there's different research studies, but essentially we know, right? We know that about 70% of buyers in B2B tech buy from their day one list. So if you're not investing heavily there, like you're not making it on that day one list. The second thing I'd say for Okta, because it's in a security space, is that the trust and recognition of being, the world's identity company and going out there is important. One of the things we're going to do more and more at Okta is co-branding with our customers. Because it's one thing for Okta to say the world's most trusted brands trust Okta, but when we go out publicly in our out of home, in our editorials, in that, and the brands that do really trust and rely on Okta are so excited to share why. That does far more than anything we can say in a trendy slogan or something like that.
Great point, Kerry. Just to double click on that, let's say if there is a Series B company, right, who wants to invest into brand, right? What are like the top 3 things that you would advise them to invest in from a marketing standpoint with the budget that they have to make their brand stand out? And I think one great point is the customer marketing piece that you mentioned. I think I'd love to double click on that along with any other couple of points you would want to recommend.
Yeah, I think that, 3, it's so hard. And I hate saying it's a case by case basis, but it is kind of hard. I mean, I think it depends on, are you in one geographic region or are you global, right? Are you focused on one persona with one route to market? Or are you focused on multiple? I would say if you're Series B, the first thing I guess I would say because of that is focus where you're going to grow your brand and deprioritize where you're not. Because I've been there, Series A, Series B, and it's tempting to be like, we want to put billboards across the globe, right? And it just dilutes it, right? Yep. And so I think ideally if you say, okay, we see a first mover advantage in EMEA, and we see it specifically with like X persona audience, I would go all in on that in whatever forms that could be, right? That could be in a big like third party event. That could be in influencer marketing that is directed at like if it's a developer audience, like paying a couple really key developer influencers. I think you'll get more bang for your buck than doing just broad-based branding.
That's a great point. That's what I want to get to at. That's fantastic. And interestingly, Kerry, I think both at Auto and probably at Okta right now, you all had both bottoms up and top down motion, right? And I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on how such a complex motion works, or is the advice to the team now, is to go top down more, and like how do you think about that dynamic happening, like where there's a free trial but also a sales team trying to expand those accounts?
I love this question. I get asked this a lot. Actually, when I talk to like venture capitalists and advisors, the number one question I get asked about is they're like, tell me about like PLG and product-led growth and that strategy. So here's what I will say. The first thing is I'm a firm believer in product-led growth, bottoms up, whatever you want to call it, when it makes sense. Okay. But right now, one of the problems I think we have is I talk to some companies and they're getting told by their board, oh, you have to have a PLG strategy. And when I go in and I talk to them and I realize like there's no bottoms up play for their product. So like, right. So I think the first thing that you have to assess is like, what is the buying motion? What is the buying pattern? How are the personas? Like what job to be done or problem are you really solving? And what is the catalyst for getting someone there? So for the Austereo side, for the developer bottoms up side, the reality is the path, the problem we were solving, and we still solve today with our customer identity cloud, is that companies really shouldn't be building identity in-house. It's less secure and it's wasting like developer resources. but so many companies do it, and so many developers were using open source JWT tokens, not to get too technical, but that's what they were doing. And so we built a whole flow that like gave them ebooks on how to use those tokens, built a token debugger, but then was like, oh, by the way, if you don't want to be dealing with all this pain in the butt stuff, here's how you can set the same thing up in our products in 5 minutes. And you do it without credit card in the trial. You have to like, developers trust code that ships. And way more than they're going to trust a marketing message. And so you have to know what that persona is going to do. Right now, at the same time, if it's in security or IT, a lot of those decisions are going to be tops down buying decisions, right? And maybe a lot of security personas aren't going to be able to do a free trial or things like that. So it's my long-winded way of saying, like, I think you have to know what real tangible differentiated problem you're solving for a certain persona and build the experience that's going to bring them to you.
Yeah. Okay. On that point, one thing I'm just observing, and you can correct me here if what I say is not correct, is that somehow I also feel that I think bottoms up free trial is a great lead source, but even companies are cutting down on purchases through credit cards, right? And they want you to go through a whole legal process to make sure that they know exactly what tools you're using. You're not putting unnecessary data into new tools, right? Like, I just feel like there is, or because of SaaS headwinds, maybe, right? I don't know what exactly is happening, but it just feels like even for a simple purchase, you need to go through some level of alignment across the buyers, a legal process, right? So I don't know if it's true or if you feel otherwise.
It is true. I mean, we still have a lot of self-service customers that swipe a credit card. But what I would say is the bottoms up motion doesn't always have to be solo. So a lot of what we do through our trials and product-led growth, we're not trying to sell the whole contract through that motion. What we're trying to do is allow the persona to have their own epiphany that then starts an enterprise selling motion, right? So even if that developer doesn't have buying authority, even if they can't use their credit card, if they get all the way through and they use a test application and they get this going and they go, oh wow, this just works, this is amazing, then they go to their CTO or their director of development, and then they'll often come and contact sales, and we'll start the enterprise selling motion. So the two can be complementary.
Right. That's a good point. You were saying that the advocate can actually go to their buyer and they will actually reach top down. So it doesn't mean that it can be either or. It can actually be both kind of a setup.
Yep, and I actually think for both our workforce identity cloud, which caters more typically to IT and security personas, and then our customer identity cloud, which is more an app dev, they're actually both bottoms up supporting practitioners and top down of supporting the business decisions. And we really have to have benefits at both altitudes.
Okay, one question on that piece, and this actually came up recently in our marketing discussion. In a case like that, do you market to the end users or the end budget owners or both? How do you think about that when you have to prioritize your resources?
I wish we could just do one, but the reality is we do all. Right now we're careful in how we do all. So but going out there and doing like developer boot camps and doing IT practitioner camps and letting them actually use the products, build out the value, that helps a lot in the movements, and we get a lot of our opportunity that way. But also doing executive forums and doing things like that allows the leaders in these organizations to connect with the long-term strategic value. So for us, I mean, for Okta at the stage of company we are, we have to do all of it. We really do.
That's great. Okay, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the use of video in marketing, right? And I feel like maybe I'm miscorrect. I've seen Okta use a lot of video in promoting your events, right?
Mm-hmm.
That even in YouTube, and other social channels, you guys are very active with video. Like, what is sort of your overall view of leveraging video in marketing, and is it a recent trend that is coming up a lot that you are advocating for? What is your opinion?
So I love video. Our teams love video. I think there's lots of of applicable uses. And I also think with AI, there's probably a lot we're going to uncover in the next year that is really interesting for scale. The first thing I would say is like, if you're trying to improve your organic search, it's really hard to make huge jumps in pure search right now in well-established terms, right? So if you're not on page one, if you're not in the top 3 for like a core technology term, like that's really hard. But on video results, there's more opportunity because we haven't had, 30 years of people fighting the algorithms and things like that. And so the first thing I would say is like, look where there's more opportunity for you to get to a top result in a different channel. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of video out there, but it's definitely a place with your metadata and so forth. You can do really smart things. I think number 2, generationally, more and more people are learning online on YouTube. It's like the go-to place. So I think it's really strong area for practitioner content. And I think it's a good complement to docs because you're going to have people who want to read documentation and you're going to have people who want to watch someone else do this. And so if you go to like the Okta dev channels or technical channels, it's rich with training content, how-to content, demo content, all of that. And then I would say, the last area is like, we got to make it easier for our customers and prospects to engage with us. So you can either send long written email invites to try to get people to go to your event, or you can produce an engaging, beautiful experience through social that's going to catch their eye. I mean, I think video is the way to go. The only thing I would say with video is I think sometimes companies can spend way too much money and time producing one video, and it's better to produce a lot of different videos and tests. That's what I would say. Does that make sense? Do you see that?
No, okay, 100%. I've spoken to a few customers who tell me their agency costs sometimes in producing like a big commercial, and sometimes these could be like big 6-figure numbers, and I'm like, oh wow, like obviously we can't afford that. Maybe that's like how big brands think about it, but I'm like, yeah, the cost of production is coming down, and let's make sure that we leverage that properly. And yeah, I completely agree with that point.
Yeah. I would say, with content in general, whether it's video or written, I believe in the minimum viable content perspective, which is like, you have a spark of an idea that you think is going to engage readers or prospects. Test it. Do the minimum viable, like spend one day to produce that, put it out there and see if you get engagement. And then if you do, make it bigger and bigger, so that if you're going to do some big bang pieces of content, you better have tested the heck out of it to make sure it's going to perform for you.
Okay. Hey, we spoke about AI like briefly in the first few minutes. I'm curious to know if you saw any early applications in the marketing team that you are excited about. I'm sure your team would have brought like 10 tools they're testing out and like showing you, right? So what is sort of your high level excitement? Where is it coming from? Yeah.
Well, how long do we have here? I could talk about a lot, but I'll just share a few. I think the first area I'm happy about is in what I would call being able to like better utilize your tools and move faster for your team. So right now I'm always thinking about how my team can scale more and be more productive. So like as an example, in the past, in the old days, we used to have to manually tag everything. We used to have to do things on the back end. And now we're using tools like in Adobe where for our digital asset management, AI just tags everything, right? And so when my team is going to like do web changes or update content, like everything is indexed, everything is findable, like the scale. And I know this isn't a very sexy form of AI, like people will talk about other stuff, but I actually think where AI will help us is in these like really manual, mundane areas of what we do in marketing to leapfrog forward. So that's one. One that's been around for a while, but I think we can do better at is using machine learning algorithms for fit and behavior score for leads prioritization rather than the old school like
Scoring
system.
Right.
Yeah, and maybe this is unpopular, but I'm just gonna put this out there. Like, I don't believe in the old school serious decision funnel, like all of that anymore. I believe that testing like behavioral metrics and things and telemetry and putting it into these algorithms is the path forward. I'm so excited about that. So if you have a pricing page on your B2B SaaS website, one of the things we did also is we put like a toggle bar on the page to slide between packages. Yeah, it's a cool user experience, but it was actually to get the data, because we found if someone toggled the pricing, they were 10 times more likely to convert than someone that just looked at the page. Taking those thousands and thousands of data points into your algorithms can really prioritize what you should pass for follow-up and or what you should market next when someone's not ready. So those are two examples I would share, but I think we should not get distracted with like the shiny thing with AI. We should look at real pragmatic, practical applications.
That's great, Kerry. One thing that I've always seen is that you all do such a great job with events, right? And like going out and like doing road shows and creating momentum through that, right? Through Octane and multiple different programs. Um, High level, how are you thinking about events this year? Be it digital or be it in person. Like what is sort of your high level direction to the team in terms of how they should think about events?
So first of all, thank you, and I have to give a shout out to Karen Flores and her team.
Yes.
They are the most amazing events team I've ever worked with. So we're very fortunate with that. So I'd say first thing, get an amazing events team. When we think about our events, we think about it in three main categories. The first is what's going to build net new names for our database, and so that's really our third-party event strategy. And third-party events have really rebounded since the pandemic, and we're going bigger and bigger into events like RSA and AWS reInvent and so forth, because the bodies are already going there. The people are already going there, so you have inertia to like capture them and make sure you're bringing in fresh faces into your database. So I think it's really important to have a strong third-party event strategy. The second is we have Octane. We have a huge proprietary event, and that is really, the place where we owe so much to our customers and prospects, and it's all about giving back to our customers, right? Making sure that they have the easiest path and value to getting certified and learning innovation and networking with their peers. And if you're going to start your own proprietary event, you have to make it about your customers and not about you. Where I see, earlier stage companies fail when they're trying to put their own proprietary event out there, because it's hard to drive thousands of people there, is they make it too much about the company and not about the prospects and customers. And so I think the team is really, really good about that. And I can't share too much, but for those that are going to look at the Octane registration site coming out in July and the new experience, I'm really proud of the digital experience they're going to give customers to build their agendas, to get excited about the content and so forth. And then the third thing that I think we think about a lot is our executive event strategy, right? And so every marketer in tech is trying to get the C-level to come to, executive events and table discussions and dinners, and it's the hardest, most expensive group to compete with. And so the team, I'm really proud of them. They do an amazing job. They are impeccable in how they execute. If you attend an Okta executive event, you will want to come back. And they're really creative in how they partner with our selling team, our field team, to drive and bring our customers in. So that's what I would say. So going back, it's the third-party events, the proprietary events, and the executive event strategy.
Kiri, on the third point you mentioned, I want to double click on that. I don't know if you can share much, but like, what is typically the offer or call to action for these executives to come on board? Is it like I'm sure it's a very thoughtful experience, right? But how do you make them come to an event? Like, what is a hook like for them?
I wish it was as easy as saying, okay, here's the recipe, here's the formula, here's what it is. I'll give you a couple thoughts though. So the first one is, there's a lot of companies out there that are like, pay us money, we will bring 14 CIOs and you get to be there. By and large, in my career, I found those events to be worthless. And the reason is there's a circuit of technology executives that just love going to those events. And I found out you see like the same 200 executives at all of those events. They just like go to, I mean, must be a nice gig to get. But and they seem really engaged and they do all the meetings and they never buy anything, right? And so the list might look really good, but I would be skeptical of those. So when it comes to like executive, I think number one, sometimes it's really useful if you have a really strong partner to do it as a partner event, because then, or even 3 partners together, then, if you want 20 people there, each company's on the hook for 7 and not 20. And then you actually get net new names and things like that. And so, that helps with Okta's having a really strong partner strategy. And it's better, again, always thinking like, love our customers. What do our customers want? That's interesting for them too, because if they're a customer of Okta, but they want to hear from AWS or they want to hear from, CrowdStrike, they get that all there. The other thing I would say is, as a part of your event, you have to give them a truly unique experience.
Right.
Something that they can't buy, right?
And that's what is very tough to describe, and you can't put it in a formula. It is truly an experiential creativity coming together to execute it. So,
yeah.
Awesome, Kerry. Kerry, I know that over the last multiple years, you've sort of become a CMO of a public company. It's not an easy feat to be there, right? Curious to hear if there are any like learnings that you've had, right, in terms of what it takes to be successful in a role like this, right? And I'm sure that it's multifaceted that folks don't understand from the outside. But any high-level thoughts that you would have reflected on over the course of your time?
Yeah. So a little secret. I never aspired to be a CMO. Like, and that is true, I know, for a lot of executive leaders. But it wasn't something I coveted. It wasn't something that was the ultimate goal. And I think that helped me because unfortunately I've seen some people I've worked with in marketing that really covet that position or that title, and they don't end up getting there. And I think it's because what often will get you there isn't the most linear path, like the straight path up. So the advice I would give is that I am to this day and always was just really curious about the different facets of marketing and being a part of a collaborative team and figuring out product market fit and how does the company succeed and win. And so my career meandered a lot. I did a lot of horizontal moves. I did a lot of moves on paper, from bigger companies to smaller companies, lateral moves that at the time people really questioned, and they would say, well, why would you make that move? Why would you go to that company? But I was always chasing like good people to work with, good products, gnarly problems to solve, and new places in marketing that I could learn. As a result, I ultimately think how I succeeded as an executive is I'm not the expert deeply in any one area. All of my leaders are better in their domains, but I have experience in all facets of marketing because I worked in almost all areas of B2B. And I think that empathy and perspective helped a lot. So I think genuinely exploring your curiosity and learning from other amazing people can take you further than you expect.
That's good, Kerry. Usually, I've seen a lot of questions around how should CMOs best work with CEOs. Let me reverse the question actually. Like, what would your advice be to CEOs, right, if they want to work with a great marketing leader? Like how should they just think about having a good relationship with their marketing leader? How can they best serve their marketing team? From your, like, if you were to reflect on what your best CEOs have given you, what yeah.
No, I appreciate this. So I have a really strong point of view on this. The first thing that I will say is, as a marketing leader in my last 2 roles, both with Okta and Austereo, I've been privileged to work with amazing CEOs, both with Todd and Eugenio. Like, they're both amazing. And so I reflect on that. What I would say is that number one, be genuinely curious about marketing as a CEO and ask a lot of questions, which both of them do, versus like coming in immediately with a point of view as a CEO. And the reason why I say this is in marketing, everyone has a point of view in marketing because everyone engages with marketing. Everyone watches commercials and sees ads and things like this. And so there's a tendency for CEOs to be like, to mandate what we should do without the experience. And so I think the most effective CEOs come in and ask a lot of questions and are genuinely curious. And then number two, the CEOs should demand a lot of marketing. They should demand a best-in-class marketing team and hold us accountable to metrics and to goals and measurement so that like we do our best work there. But also like respecting and being curious about the domain expertise. So that's the advice I would give.
On the second point, this is a very important point you mentioned, right? And I've it's not that I'm so experienced, but I've made this mistake multiple times that in the process of holding the team accountable, you get in the details so much that tends to piss the team off a little bit, right? Like what is the right balance that you've seen where you want to hold the team accountable, you want to voice your point of view, you want to make sure the team does it, but you also want to respect, hey, like like how should you balance that?
Well, I kind of believe in the model from Patrick Lencioni and the advantage, which is that you can never hold a team accountable. Like I can't hold my team accountable, or the CEO can't hold the team accountable until you've established trust. Trust has to come before candor. And so when I was saying in the beginning, like CEOs should be curious, should gain empathy, should understand what's going on, all of that builds trust and perspective. And so if you put in that work initially, then you're more likely to have the respect and be able to hold the team accountable because you understand their world. If you start with accountability before you have empathy or trust, you will break the team's trust. So that's why I think that's so important.
Awesome. Okay, last question for you. I know you've answered a series of questions from me. I know you're very active in DEI and initiatives at Okta around that, right? If a woman in their middle stage of their career is listening to this conversation and want to sort of get to where you are, or some marketing leadership eventually, what sort of guidance would you give them that that they can sort of learn from you or other CMOs who have been there and done that? What should they think about early on in their career?
So the thing that I've learned looking in retrospect, it's always easier to like look back and get the learnings out of this. So I want to be clear, I did not understand this probably until the last 5 years. Is the advice I would give is you don't have to be perfect in every area to move to the next step of your career. Statistically speaking, a lot of studies have shown that like if there's two people going for a job, right, with a job description, statistically, women expect to check every single box on the requirements list before they will apply or raise their hand. And that statistically, men, like if they're 50% of the way there, they're like, I can do it. I can get there. Right. And I think there's cultural bias and things like that goes into that. So the advice I would say is know that like, a lot of times, like you'll be able to figure it out. You don't have to immediately be perfect, but you do have to be honest, hardworking, curious, high integrity. And as long as you have those things and you're going to the next stage, most of the time you will be fine. So that's the advice I give. Just be brave with it.
There was similar to that. I was speaking to one more CMO and she was mentioning that don't be afraid to ask for help, especially for women in growing up in their career, and find mentors who you can like just speak to and like figure out things if you are feeling so afraid to bring it up to your own team, right? Like which I'm sure you guys have a bunch of different programs at Okta, right, to ensure that that is done.
We do have mentorship programs, but what I will also say, by the way, the mentor thing is huge. I am a big believer in mentors and sponsors, both. And I'm also a big believer in having mentors inside and outside of your company. Right. To this day, I have multiple mentors outside of this company, both male and female, that are my safe space that I can go to and say, I don't know what this is, or I'm having an emotional moment, and they're there for me. So I agree with that as well.
That's awesome. Kerry, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for doing this. I think what I really appreciated from this conversation was that since you had experience across both early stage startups and public companies. You empathize with across different stages of a company's journey, and I personally believe it's always good to have that early stage experience, because you know how tough it is to build a brand, and you don't realize when you become a CMO of a public company. So kudos to you for having both these experiences. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you so much for having me.